Alex entering the pits is P29. 20 minutes remaining in the session. Race start. Stephen Ferguson is second. New pole in Reservoir Bend is third. Stephen Ferguson is second. Andy in Mandarin Oriental Bend is second. New pole is P3. Stephen Ferguson in Lisboa Bend is P2. New pole in San Francisco Hill is P3. Alex exiting pits. Stephen Ferguson in San Francisco Hill is second. New pole is P3. Stephen Ferguson is P2. New pole in Teddy Yuk is third. Stephen Ferguson in Solitude S's is P2. New pole is P3. Stephen Ferguson is P2. Andy in Police is P2 with 50 kilos. Andy lost P2 to New pole. New pole in Villa Maria Bend is P2. Andy in Villa Maria Bend 2 is third. New pole in Melco Hairpin is second. James in Melco Hairpin is P4. New pole is third. Andy in Fishermen S Bend is P2, 0.9 ahead of New pole. New pole is third, 0.5 ahead of James. Andy in Upend is second, 1.1 behind Stephen Ferguson. New pole is third, 0.7 ahead of James. Andy is P2, 1.2 ahead of New pole. New pole is third. Best lap is a 2:23.644. 2.462 of the fastest lap. Andy is P2, 1.1 ahead of New pole. New pole in Lisboa Bend on lap 2 is third, 1.0 behind Andy. Andy in San Francisco Hill is second, 1.2 behind Stephen Ferguson. James in San Francisco Hill is fourth. Best lap is a 2:24.352. 3.170 of the fastest lap. Andy is P2, 1.0 behind Stephen Ferguson. New pole in Teddy Yuk is P3, 1.5 behind Andy. Andy is P2, 1.5 behind Stephen Ferguson. New pole in Melco Hairpin is third, 1.4 behind Andy. Andy is P2. Best lap is a 2:22.361. 1.179 of the fastest lap. Alex on lap 2 is 6th, 1.5 behind James. Alex passed James for 5th. Andy is second, 1.5 behind Stephen Ferguson. 15 minutes remaining in the session. New pole on lap 3 is P3, 1.9 behind Andy. Andy in Teddy Yip is second, 1.4 behind Stephen Ferguson. Alex in Lingnan Bend on lap 3 is fifth, 0.2 behind Stu. Alex passed Stu for fourth. Andy is second, 1.3 behind Stephen Ferguson. Stu in Teddy Yip is P5 with 100 kilos, 1.4 behind Alex. Andy on lap 3 is P2, 0.9 behind Stephen Ferguson. New pole in our bend is third. Andy in Reservoir Bend is P2, 0.3 behind Stephen Ferguson. James on lap 3 is P6, 1.5 behind Stu. Stephen Ferguson in Lisboa Bend is second, 0.7 behind Andy. James on lap 4 is P6, 0.5 behind Stu. Stephen Ferguson in San Francisco Hill is P2. Best lap is a 2:13.675. 4.000 of the fastest lap. Stu is 6th, 0.3 behind James. Stephen Ferguson in Teddy Yip is P2, 0.4 behind Andy. New pole in Teddy Yip is P3. Best lap is a 2:12.638. 2.963 of the fastest lap. Stephen Ferguson in Pile is second, 0.5 behind Andy. New pole on lap 4 is P3, 0.7 behind Stephen Ferguson. Pete entering the pits is P7. Stephen Ferguson is second, 0.4 ahead of New pole. New pole in Donna Maria Bend 2 is P3, 0.5 behind Stephen Ferguson. Stephen Ferguson is P2, 0.7 behind Andy. New pole in Melco Hairpin is P3. Stephen Ferguson on lap 4 is P2, 0.7 ahead of New pole. New pole is third, 0.5 behind Stephen Ferguson. Stephen Ferguson is second, 0.6 behind Andy. New pole in our bend is third, 1.4 behind Stephen Ferguson. Stephen Ferguson is second. New pole is third, 1.4 behind Stephen Ferguson. Andy is second battling Stephen Ferguson. Pete exiting pits. Stephen Ferguson is P2. New pole is P3, 1.3 behind Stephen Ferguson. Andy in Lisboa Bend is second, 0.5 behind Stephen Ferguson. New pole in San Francisco Hill is third, 0.4 behind Andy. Andy is P2, 0.1 behind Stephen Ferguson. Andy was 0.6 faster last lap. New pole in Maternity Bend is P3, 0.5 behind Andy. 10 minutes remaining in the session. Andy in Teddy Yip is second, 0.1 ahead of Newport. Newport in Solitude S's is P3, 0.1 behind Andy. Andy is P3, 0.3 behind Newport. Newport is P2, 1.6 ahead of Andy. Andy is P3, 3.7 behind Newport. Newport is P2, 1.5 behind Stephen Ferguson. James is P6 battling Stu. James passed Stu for P5. Newport in Solitude S's is P2, 0.9 behind Stephen Ferguson. James is P5. Newport in Fisherman S. Bend is second. Stephen Ferguson is P2 battling Newport. James is 5th. Best lap is a 2:15.502. 7.139 off the fastest lap. Stephen Ferguson in Maternity Bend on lap 7 is P2, 1.4 behind Newport. 5 minutes remaining in the session. New Paul is P1, 2.5 ahead of Stephen Ferguson. Stephen Ferguson in Melco hairpin is P2, 1.5 behind New Paul. Stu is P6. Pete on lap 5 is P7 with 50 kilos. Stephen Ferguson in Solitude S's is second. Andy in Duna Maria Bend 2 is fourth. Stephen Ferguson is P2. Best lap is a 2:13.289. 4.926 off the fastest lap. Stu in Melco hairpin is P6. Stephen Ferguson in Melco hairpin on lap 9 is second, 1.5 behind New Paul. The leader has just finished the race. New Paul finished first. Stephen Ferguson finished second. Alex finished P3. Andy finished P4. James is 5th. James finished 5th. Pete finished P7. Stu is P6. Stu finished 6th. James is P2. Andy from Spain is P3. Alex from England is P4. Stephen Ferguson from Canada is P5. New Paul from England is 6th. Stu from Scotland is P1. "20 minutes remaining in the session. Race start. James is P2. Stu in Reservoir Bend is P2. James is P3. Stu in Mandarin Oriental Bend is P3. James is 2nd. Andy in Lisboa Bend is P2. Alex in San Francisco Hill is 3rd. Andy in San Francisco Hill is 2nd. Stephen Ferguson entering the pits is P6. Alex is 3rd. James in Maternity Bend is 2nd. Andy is 2nd. New Paul in Teddy Yip is 4th. Stu in Teddy Yip is 5th. Alex is 3rd. Andy in Solitude S's is P2. New Paul in Solitude S's is 4th. Andy is P2. Alex is 3rd. Andy in Police is P2. Alex in Moorish Hill is 3rd. Andy in Donna Maria Bend is 2nd, 0.1 behind James. Alex in Donna Maria Bend 2 is P3, 1.0 behind Andy. Andy is P2, 0.5 behind James. Stu in Melco Hairpin on lap 1 is 5th, 1.3 behind New Paul. Andy in Black Sands is 2nd. Alex is P3, 0.3 behind Andy. Andy on lap 1 is 2nd, 0.6 ahead of Alex. Alex in Fisherman S Bend on lap 1 is P3, 0.6 ahead of New Paul. Andy is 2nd, 0.2 behind James. Alex is 3rd, 0.4 behind Andy. Andy is 2nd. Alex is 3rd, 0.3 ahead of New Paul. James is P2. Best lap is a 3:07.806. New Paul on lap 2 is 3rd battling Alex. James is 2nd battling Andy. New Paul on lap 2 is 4th, 0.2 behind Alex. James in San Francisco Hill is 2nd, 0.7 behind Andy. Alex in San Francisco Hill is 3rd, 0.7 ahead of New Paul. James is P2. Alex in Maternity Bend is 3rd, 0.4 behind James. James in Teddy Yup is P2, 0.3 ahead of Alex. Alex in Solitude S's is 3rd, 0.2 behind James. James is 2nd, 0.4 behind Andy. Alex is 3rd, 0.1 behind James. New Paul in Police is 4th, 0.2 behind Alex. Stephen Ferguson in Moorish Hill is 2nd, 0.4 behind James. Stu in Moorish Hill is P2, 0.5 ahead of Stephen Ferguson. Stephen Ferguson on lap 2 is P3, 0.7 behind Stu. James in Donna Maria Bend 2 is 3rd, 0.3 ahead of Alex. 15 minutes remaining in the session. Stephen Ferguson in Melco Hairpin is 2nd, 0.9 behind Stu. James in Melco Hairpin is P3. Stephen Ferguson is P2, 0.8 ahead of James. James in Fisherman S Bend is 3rd, 0.5 ahead of Alex. Stephen Ferguson is 2nd, 0.7 behind Stu. James in Bend is P3, 0.3 ahead of Alex. Stu is 2nd, 0.1 ahead of James. James is 2nd, 0.1 ahead of Stu. Stu was 3.1 faster last lap. Stu is 3rd, 0.1 behind James. James is 2nd. Best lap is a 2:30.223. 4.474 of the fastest lap. James passed Stephen Ferguson for P1. Stephen Ferguson is P2. Alex is P4, 0.6 behind Andy. Stephen Ferguson is P2, 0.2 behind James. Stephen Ferguson was 4.5 faster last lap. Alex is 4th, 0.7 behind Andy. Stephen Ferguson in Teddy Yup is P2, 0.3 behind James. Alex in Teddy Yup is 4th, 0.5 behind Andy. Stephen Ferguson is P2, 0.4 behind James. Alex is 4th, 0.7 behind Andy. Alex was 4.4 faster last lap. Stephen Ferguson on lap 3 is P2, 0.5 behind James. Andy in Moorish Hill is P4, 0.6 behind Alex. Stephen Ferguson in Donna Maria Bend 2 is 2nd. Best lap is a 2:25.749. Alex is P4, 0.4 behind Andy. Stephen Ferguson in Black Sands is 2nd, 0.5 behind James. Alex in Black Sands is 4th, 0.5 behind Andy. Stephen Ferguson in Fisherman S Bend is P2, 0.3 behind James. Alex on lap 3 is 4th, 0.1 behind Andy. Stephen Ferguson in Bend is 2nd, 0.4 behind James. Alex on lap 3 is 4th, 0.1 behind Andy. Stephen Ferguson on lap 4 is 2nd, 0.3 behind James. James was 0.8 faster last lap. Alex is P4 battling Andy. Stephen Ferguson is P2, 0.2 behind James. Alex on lap 4 is P4, 0.2 behind Andy. Stephen Ferguson in San Francisco Hill on lap 4 is P2, 0.4 behind James. Andy in Lisboa Bend is P5 with 200 kilos. Best lap is a 2:15.583. 3.293 of the fastest lap. Andy lost P5 to Newport. Stephen Ferguson is P2. Alex is P3, 1.2 behind Stephen Ferguson. Stephen Ferguson is P2, 0.5 behind James. Alex is third, 0.4 behind Stephen Ferguson. Stephen Ferguson in police on lap 4 is P2, 0.4 ahead of Alex. Andy in Solitude S's is P6, 0.7 behind Newport. Newport in police is 5th, 0.7 ahead of Andy. Newport is now P4. Stephen Ferguson in Moorish Hill is 4th, 0.1 ahead of Newport. Stephen Ferguson entering the pits is P6. Alex is P2. 10 minutes remaining in the session. Andy is P3. Andy is now P4. Alex in Melco hairpin is 3rd. Best lap is a 2:18.660. 6.370 of the fastest lap. Andy is 3rd battling Alex. Andy was 3.1 faster last lap. Stu is 4th, 4.5 behind Andy. Alex is P2. James in Melco hairpin is P1. Alex in Black Sands is P2, 1.5 behind James. James was 31.8 faster last lap. James is 2nd battling Alex. Alex is 2nd battling James. Stu is P4, 3.2 behind Andy. Alex is second, 0.3 behind James. New Paul is P5, 4.0 behind Stu. 5 minutes remaining in the session. James in upend is P2, 0.2 behind Alex. Alex is P2 battling James. Stu in Lisboa Bend is 4th. Best lap is a 2:19.128. 8.686 off the fastest lap. Alex is second. Best lap is a 2:10.442. New Paul is P5, 2.9 behind Stu. New Paul was 2.5 faster last lap. James in Fisherman S Bend is second, 0.2 behind Alex. New Paul is P5. James is P2, 0.7 behind Alex. New Paul is 5th. James in San Francisco Hill is P2. Best lap is a 2:13.527. 3.085 of the fastest lap. Stu in Mandarin Oriental Bend is 5th, 0.2 behind New Paul. New Paul was 7.4 faster last lap. James is P2, 1.5 behind Alex. Stu in San Francisco Hill is P5, 0.9 behind New Paul. James in Police is second, 1.2 behind Alex. Stu is 5th, 1.1 behind New Paul. James in upend is second, 4.2 behind Alex. Stu in Melco hairpin is P5, 1.8 behind New Paul. Alex is P1. James in Donna Maria bend 2 is P2. The leader has just finished the race. Alex finished first. James finished second. Andy finished third. New Paul finished fourth. Stu finished P5.